Hey, how are ya? I'm the game developer of a top-down action shooter called Suit for Hire. Well, it's top-down, but what happens if you add third person to it? So yeah, Suit for Hire has third person, albeit it's extremely experimental and kind of broken in some aspects, and also the ceiling is missing. But with some more work, it'll look a lot better. But you know what? It's honestly really worth it. It's fun. And you know what? I kind of miss doing shit like this in my game development career. Just doing crazy experiments. A lot of people from my live stream on Twitch said that this was a bad idea. I don't disagree with them, to be completely honest with you. The implementation hasn't been too difficult. There's obviously challenges to think about. The camera, all this kind of stuff. Collision might be a bit different, because obviously we're thinking about a top-down game. Some of the AI is broken. We have a thing where enemies only fire at you if they're off-screen, and if you look down while a guy is about to shoot you, well, they won't shoot you, and they'll just stand there. So obviously some things to fix, but we actually released it recently on our test branch for the game. So if you have the game, or if you want to buy it, which is 40% off on Steam right now due to the autumn sale, then you can pick it up, try it out, and see how it feels. If it feels like shit, then just, I don't know, refund it or something. You can do that. But yeah, we're gathering feedback, bug reports on it, and all that kind of good stuff. There's quite a bit of stuff missing still. Like I said, we still have to put in some ceilings in some levels. It just looks like the dark, endless void of nothingness. But other than that, the gameplay itself is actually quite surprisingly working. Somewhat, kind of. The first thing I did was literally just slapping a camera and making it so we can look around and shoot at things like you would assume in a third-person game. We kind of did something a little different. I think this is a little bit more like Deadlock, where your character always looks at the crosshair where you're aiming. So we had to do some stuff around that, and honestly, it doesn't feel half bad. The melee combat actually worked out pretty well. It basically worked right off the bat. Obviously, we can make some adjustments to it. Something to account for that I'm experiencing is because there's a whole new level of depth, everything kind of looks slower. The bullets in top-down looked fine, but then in third person, they look really slow, like a snail. It looks horrendous. So there's a high probability that I might actually change the speed of things, how things function in third person, just to make it kind of feel better. Now, you're probably wondering, why did I do this? Why am I going through the paces of adding third person to my game when I could potentially just focus on other things, maybe even improve the top-down, which is completely valid. Honestly, I kind of just wanted to try it. I know that's kind of crazy, but I feel like that's something that's kind of not thought about too much these days, is just experimentation with stuff. It's an early access game. It's my first game release. It's not like I'm anal about it or anything like that. I just kind of want to have a good time with it. And something that I thought about is, because this is a very John Wick inspired game, a lot of people, I feel like, were kind of looking for a game that was in the third person perspective. So I was actually thinking about it from a business perspective in some way, right? I feel like it'd be interesting. You have some players that might actually purchase the game literally just for the third person, which is why I'm putting some effort into it. And of course, I am putting effort into other things for the 1.0 update, because this is going to be a part of the 1.0 update. Finally, I'm almost done. I can remove my shackles of working on this game. And, you know, the 1.0 update, it has a bunch of new levels, a bunch of new systems, all this kind of stuff that I'm probably going to end up scope creeping on, and then it will end up never getting released because I'm spending my entire life on this. It's been 3 years. Please help. Another reason why I thought it would be a good idea to add third person is I feel like top-down shooters are kind of within a niche. It was kind of interesting to think, okay, well, I have all these systems and I worked so hard on getting all these levels. I might as well try to add a third-person perspective and see how players feel about it, even though I might not make it the core, you know, marketing thing. I might not even say that the game has third-person. Maybe I'll put it in the description or something like that. But if, you know, some YouTubers end up making videos about the third-person mode and people are enjoying it, then honestly, that's kind of a win in my book, because then people are introduced to the game that otherwise probably wouldn't have bought it. There's a few people on my stream that said they would buy the game just for the third person mode, which I think is a really cool experiment. It kind of shows to developers that your camera perspective does make a big difference, and it controls the game, of course. And I also feel like top down is kind of You know, like I said, it's a niche. Not many people really like it, especially a game like this. I feel like people are probably like, oh, it's lost potential. You could have like a John Wick game that's in third person. And honestly, to that, I say just go play Max Payne. Seriously. But now that Suit for Hire is third person, and albeit it's not the best thing in the world, I think it'll be really interesting to see how the game shifts in terms of the player base, to see what happens there. But anywho, you know, this was a great little thing that I wanted to kind of try out, and we've seen games do it in the past. GTA 5 added first person later on. Fortnite's currently adding first person. We've had games in the past that provides both perspectives, and I feel like we kind of don't have that anymore, and understandably so. There's a lot of work that goes into adding both and making them both look good, but we've had games like Call of Duty do it, PUBG, and a bunch of other games as well. Even old Star Wars Jedi Knight games had both first person and third person, albeit in my opinion, I think the third person looked better for those games. But I kind of get why developers wouldn't do this. Like, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of animation stuff involved, especially going from first person to third person. They're entirely different view models and everything else. Third person to top down and top down to third person actually is probably easier than those, to be honest. And you know, I'd actually love to see more top-down games do this, especially if they're in a 3D perspective. Now, of course, if you're looking at games like Hotline Miami, they probably wouldn't be able to do that because we're talking pixel art. It's a completely different thing. But I would love to see other games do this and experiment with it, because I think it's really fun. It's kind of like a different way of looking at it. I will say one thing that's extremely important, like I stated before, the bullets are really slow and stuff like that. Making changes to those just for third person does change the game design, and there's a lot of things that do need to change on the game design side in third person perspective. If we have enemies shooting at you from the back and they're taking a lethal shot at you, by the way, they do this little circle, they basically prepare to shoot at you, which is like a lethal shot. We need to somehow show to the player if they're going to get shot in the back, because getting shot in the back, it's not really fun, especially if you're not told you're about to get shot in the back, albeit can't really happen right now because our AI is broken, but when it does happen, you know, there should be some sort of indicator that the player can see. Other than that, though, the biggest problem with switching perspectives, especially from top-down to third-person, top-down is great for optimization. You just have to focus on the specific camera viewport, and you can really control the space. Third-person, well, not so much. You can't really do that. So there's quite a bit of optimization we'll probably have to do. There's obviously areas that are the void. You can't see anything beyond it, so it would probably be good to kind of hide that a little bit, or, you know, add some fog or something of the sort. I don't know. So that'll probably be a bit of a challenge, which means I have to go through every single one of our past levels to fix that. That's okay. I'm okay with doing that. Kind of. Well, current me is okay with it. Future me might not be too happy about it. But, yeah, should be fine, right? Of course, another thing with third person as well, not just the environment, but the character animations, there is a lot of imperfections with it, which are hidden in top-down. Our character looks like he's hunchback sometimes. The crouching looks a bit weird sometimes. You know, you can really hide a lot of bullshit when you're doing top-down, but when you're in third person, it's a completely different story. There's a lot more things involved. Camera controls need to feel better, and if they feel off, the entire experience feels off. And we do have a problem right now where you go through a doorway and it kind of feels a little janky, so quite a few things we need to fix there. But other than that, I'm honestly having a really fun time with adding this. I had a lot of people just kind of tell me don't do that, which, you know, that's fine, and they're probably right, but I really want to experiment with this, and the whole reasoning as to why I wanted to try this out is to see, is it possible to increase the sales of a game or increase the interest in it by adding in a different camera perspective? I feel like if you look back at some games in the past, there have always been these discussions about, I would love to play it this way or that way. There's some games that might release as top-down, and then you have players that are like, I would love this game, but if it was third-person or first-person. And I'm sure you could probably think of one off the top of your head. A lot of Suit for Hire players have thought about that. They were like, I would love to play this in first-person or third-person or whatever. And of course, you know, me being the crazy developer I am, I'm doing that because I kind of can. Of course, it makes sense why some developers don't do it. Again, I get it. But it's just so fun. There's something fun and challenging and kind of interesting about seeing your game that you worked on in a different perspective, in an entirely different camera's perspective, playing a different way. Of course, it's a whole different game, but I think there's something really fun about that. Now, of course, like I said, we have a test branch out if you want to try it out, and you can let me know some feedback on Discord, Twitter, YouTube, the Steam discussion hub, email, I don't know. Let me know what you think about it if you have access to the game. If you don't have access to the game, of course, the game is 40% off for the autumn sale, like I mentioned. Sorry, this is starting to sound a little bit like an ad. I'd love to hear what you think about it. I think it's fun. It obviously is extremely experimental, very early. There's a lot of stuff I need to fix and work on, but the core game is kind of there for the most part. So, yeah, give it a whirl, see how it feels, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.